Salutations Rangers, General Bradley 101 back at you again with some more lore. And in today's video, ladies and gentlemen, we're back with what do people get wrong about X? And today, we got a pretty special one. The fan favorite of many a Chaos fellow and many a regular fellow. And pretty much the poster boy of Chaos. The World Eaters. So, make sure to polish your skulls, make sure the blood is filled, get the milk for the cornflakes, the butter for the corn cob, and the syrup for the corn cakes. Cause baby, today we're taking a look at the World Eaters. Khorne's tragic chosen champions. So for those of you who don't know, the World Eaters were the 12th Legion Astartes, created from the gene seed of the Primarch known as Angron, the Red Angel, and they were previously known as the Warhounds, and they were one of the legions that transferred over to Chaos. You see though, the World Eaters are pretty tragic. There are a lot of things and a lot of people that you can consider tragic in 40k, but the World Eaters rank there right on top. You see, for those of you who don't know, Angron was originally supposed to be an empath. He was sort of supposed to be a paladin type unit, i.e. his whole shtick, his special ability, was that he was supposed to be able to take damage from others onto himself and shield them. We don't know if this is somehow psychic or if it's just a built-in thing. It's one of those weird powers that Primarchs have. But that's what he was supposed to be, a defender of others, a paladin, noble, just, yet still brutal. However, you know, due to Chaos and all of its shenanigans, the nobility and all that nonsense got thrown out, and we got more brutality, and more brutality, and more brutality. Hey, I heard you'd like some brutality, so I put some brutality with your brutality with a side of brutality with some more brutality, and a little bit of tragic just on the side. TLDR of Angron's story, he arrived on a slave planet, was forced to kill his adoptive father, led a slave revolt, but nearly failed, and then right on the cusp of it, when he was going to go into battle and die with his fellows, Big E teleported in and yoinked him out. Thus, upon his homeworld of Nuceria, was he forever known as Angron the Coward, he who ran away. And that basically ruined Angron's life for the rest of forever. Oh yeah, he also had these brain tubes stuck in his brain that made him go crazy and that was slowly killing him, aka the Butcher's Nails. These were a combat implant but basically made the bearer feel all types of pain and discomfort and terror, basically every single negative emotion as well as intense physical pain, if they weren't in combat. The only time the nails stopped biting was when you were literally killing someone, or biting another person. Needless to say, Angron did not have a good time, and he hated the Emperor for this. But then that translated into him hating his legion as well. You see, when Angron met with his legion, he then went on to go and kill 8 legion officers. People think they're captains, not captains, proper high officers, including the Master of the Legion, the Master of the Assault Cadre, and pretty much everyone else who was really important. Bro basically wiped out the entire upper command structure by himself, before Kharn came in and managed to convince him otherwise. And by convince him otherwise, I mean he just survived the beatings. Yeah, Angron was not a good dad, but then again Big E was not a good dad as well, so something generational trauma. Angron was incredibly hypercritical of his sons, and he hated them. He hated everything about them, and he forced them to do crazy things. If they did not conquer a world within 24 hours, they would have to bear marks of shame by rubbing dirt into open wounds, preventing it from healing properly. And probably some of them would die, usually. Angron had a tendency to murder his sons quite a bit. He even forced them to implant the Butcher's Nails into his legion. Yep, the same thing that was killing him and making him fucked up, he put into his legion. Also note that his legion were also supposed to be a legion of empaths. Because, yeah, something 40k, something what the fuck, fucking tragic. Eventually though, Angron would fall to Chaos, mainly because he hated Big E. And eventually, Lorgar, to save his life, turned him into a demon Primarch, and the greatest champion of Khorne. And his legion followed suit, eventually going from the noble Warhounds, their previous legion name, of paladins and empaths, which was still brutal, and eventually turning them into full-on berserkers, rampaging monsters only fit to reap blood for the Blood God, and skulls for the Skull Throne. Now that's all the TLDR, right? And everyone already knows that. The thing is though, what people get wrong about the World Eaters is that all they ever wanted was to be loved. They don't want to fight, they don't like war, they don't like killing, and they do not enjoy killing. Khorne berserkers are not happy, and that's another important distinction. There are no more World Eaters, or there are very few left. And those that are left are not Warhounds. They're basically Khorne berserkers. But we'll touch up more about that later. One thing that the Warhounds pride themselves on was their sense of a warrior brotherhood. The Warhounds were always brutal, but there was a type of odd nobility to them. They were the Warhounds of the Emperor. They were his loyal guard dogs. They were brutal, they were vicious, yes, but They were somewhat disciplined. They had this air of nobility about them, this sense of duty. They were not like the World Eaters, or later the Khorne Berserkers, in which case there was nothing redeemable about them. They were terribly vicious, bloodthirsty, yes, but they also understood that they were a tool. They had a sense of duty to them. Very much so, they were kind of like the Thunder Warriors of old. In fact, the Warhounds were one of the new Astartes legions tasked with combating the Thunder Warriors, with them alongside the Dark Angels being one of the two legions to actually stop them. In fact, they would engage on the largest Astartes and Thunder Warrior fight ever since the coup of Ushotan. Well, while they would lose 5 for their number for every one Thunder Warrior fell, they gave the Thunder Warriors a warrior's death, an honorable death, and they respected them for that. There was a sense of martial pride. They were proud to be what they are. They were proud to do what they need to do. They were proud to be warriors, servants of the Emperor and his Imperium. Though when Angron came about, that pride went away, basically. Angron had no pride, because he felt that he had no honor. The weight of his people being left to die without him was a shadow that hung over him until the day he died. He could never forgive himself for everything that happened. And as per usual, the sins of the father were meant to be wrought by that of the child. So, Angron did not feel any pride for his legion, and thus did he not allow his legion to feel any pride. To them, they were just reminders of his mistake, a pale imitation of his former men. He hated them. But the World Eaters did not hate Angron. They loved him. He was their father. The World Eaters wanted to be loved. They craved brotherhood, fraternity. You see, the World Eaters and Angron were made to be the most lovable brothers. Alongside Vulcan and Sanguinius, they were supposed to have the greatest love for their brothers, because they were meant to be the shield. You gotta love somebody a hell of a lot to stand in the way of bolt of fire and take hits so that they may live. Now if you take a look at the Warhounds during the Great Crusade before they met up with Angron, they were very much amicable fellows. Whenever anyone would work with them, they often always were pretty good allies. A little bit rough around the edges, yeah, and a bit on the bloody side, but no one really had that major complaints about them per se. Notably, they were quite instrumental in the Ultramarines, basically recovering their honor. When Guilliman was reunited with his legion, the shadow of the Osirian Cybrids hung greatly over them. And it would be actually an assault company of the Warhounds that would actually find the Osirian Cybrids, and that would end up letting the Ultramarines know and continuing to aid them in this endeavor. The Warhounds were just that. Terrible and vicious dogs, yes, but loyal hounds, loyal to a fault. And eventually their master would be Angron, and there would be no love to be found amongst his ranks. That's why they took the nails, to get closer to their dad. They thought that if they mutilated themselves, their father would see some kinship with them, and love them. But that is not the case. It doesn't matter how much you may love someone. It doesn't matter how much you may want something. If the other person does not reciprocate, your actions are naught but in vain. But the Warhounds, whether through blind loyalty or genetic manipulation, they never gave up on their father, even though their father had given up on them before he had even seen them. But yet, the Warhounds marched on. The only time the Warhounds would ever question their wayward father would be during the massacre of Istan III. But when the loyalist Warhounds were sent to the surface, they would not turn against the Emperor. Not even for their father. They would stand fast and they would fight. And for many World Eaters, this would be the breaking point. For a Warhound, brotherhood and fraternity is everything. They want to be loved. They want that sense of the warrior brotherhood. That is their reason for existing. Istan III was the personification of betrayal. A betrayal of not only the Emperor, but a betrayal of their ideas, of their very legion, and of their soul. Their father ordered them to kill their brothers because they still served the Emperor. The Emperor, who had raised them out of the gutters of old night, from the slums of terror, had given them arms and armor, the greatest that mankind had ever known, had made them know no fear. They were to betray him, all so that their father may love them. This would cause many Warhounds to die. Some in the literal sense with the combat, but most of them in a spiritual sense. They forgot themselves. So racked were they by guilt that they gave themselves into the worship of Kharn. No longer were they the honorable warrior of the Warhounds, but now they were the maddened berserkers of Kharn, lost, with naught but anything by their side. And as the heresy moved on, it would only get worse and worse. We see this many times with Kharn. As he travels throughout the heresy, he is still relatively intact. He is still a Warhound, if slowly transforming. But the one thing that kept him in check was his brotherhood with Orgultal. And while Kharn is still on the right path, and not the eightfolded one yet, we see him speaking in disdain, tragedy, disgust, sorrow, and pity about his brothers, how they had changed. No longer were they the Warhounds, No longer was there any honor, with any strategy was there nobility. All there was maddened berserkers. They were lost, and Kharn mourned this loss. He, like most of the World Eaters, imagined that eventually they would prove themselves to their father, and he would join their fraternity, he would accept them as their own, and he would lead them. But that never came. Angron was a broken man, and instead of fixing himself or trying to fix himself, instead of accepting what life was for him, he decided to break everything else around him, including his own sons. But were they ever his sons? If a father never sees you as a loved one, can you truly claim to be his son? For to him you were never a child. You were nothing but a mere inconvenience. But despite all that, a child will still see a parent as a parent, and will still follow them anywhere, even at the smallest whisper at a chance of love, no matter how fleeting, no matter how fake. For to a child, the love of a parent is the only love that matters. And so too did the World Eaters follow Angron into darkness and damnation. Even after he became a demon Primarch, and after the loss of the heresy, and the fleeing into the Eye of Terror, and into the warp itself, they were still the World Eaters, but truly gone. Any semblance of the noble Warhound was lost. All that was left was the World Eaters, in their hungry, maddened state. But there was still one or two that remembered the old days. There was still a bit of hope for them, but that, sadly, would be the end of it. The World Eaters, like many other legions, splintered, but in the return of Angron and his assault on the new Astronomicon, Angron would raise his massive axes, and he would summon the legion to muster. And every single legionnaire, whether he had been in the old legion, whether he had fought in the heresy, or whether he had just been born yesterday, answered the call of the Red Angel. It is said that over 80,000 Space Marines were assembled, with hundreds of old craft, the bulk of them 50,000 and several hundred craft being from the days of the old legion. The legion had been reformed, with a Primarch at their head. This was seen as a return to form for many. Perhaps the old Warhounds could be revived. Even still, despite all of it, even after 10,000 years of being betrayed, 10,000 years of lovelessness, 10,000 years of being abused, the World Eaters, those who still had their wits about them, thought that maybe it might yet still change. However, hope is a cruel thing, for while it gives light unending, when that light is snuffed out, the darkness that remains is all-encompassing and soul-crushing. Angron and the bulk of his legion would eventually die, when the newfound device would explode, wiping out most of the legion with them. Approximately 80% of the Space Marines were lost, as well as Angron himself. It is said that only approximately 5,000 of the old legion remain, but all those that remain are said to be not World Eaters, but berserkers, lost of everything, lost of mind, of soul, of spirit, of purpose, slobbering madmen, craving only the blood and skull, nothing less and nothing more. Doing research for this video, I often talk to a great deal of my own friends, both who love the World Eaters and both who didn't know much about them. I haven't always been the biggest fan of the World Eaters, thus I can't really rely on my own sense to get what exactly is wrong with them. While I may have an idea, I will never be invested as them as I am, say, for the Salamanders or the Ultramarines. So, if I want to truly understand what it means to be a World Eater, I need to know from someone who truly understands them, or as close as we can. And one of my good friends pointed this out to me, and he said that pretty much every other legion has a chance, every traitor legion, and the loyalists too, I guess you could say, have a chance to return back to some form of a legion. The World Eaters don't have that. Sure, Angron may come back, but if he does, there are no World Eaters left. There are no World Eaters, there are only Khorne Berserkers. Angron can make a new legion of Khorne Berserkers, yes, but the World Eaters are basically gone. And the Warhounds were lost, Lord Almighty knows when. They are a legion truly destroyed, and it is a tragic thing to think about. The World Eaters loved each other. They wanted brotherhood. They craved it. They were not glory seekers like the Emperor's children, nor did they demand the greatest technology like the Iron Hands. They were not meant to be loved by all like the Ultramarines, nor did they hold any special accolades like the Dark Angels. They were warriors. Simple, brash, Brutal, but loyal, honorable, and noble. All they wanted was to serve their brothers, and all they needed when the day was won was to sit by the fire, to remember the dead, and to share a drink with those whom they bled with. Ironically, that is all that Angron wanted as well. He wanted his gladiators to be equals. He wanted them to be free. He wanted them to stand shoulder to shoulder with him and live as noble warriors, deserving of honor. Yet the Emperor robbed that from him, for even in death is there honor. But in life, a life without honor is a living death. Thus the rage consumed Angron, and he lost himself. So lost, angered, and pained was he, that he did not realize that just like the slaves in Nuceria, he robbed his own sons of a chance of the honorable brotherhood. He showed them no love. He showed them no compassion. He set them nearly impossible tasks. And if they so much as even failed in the slightest bit, they were punished and permanently marked, a reminder of their failures. They would have no honor in them. He mutilated his own sons, twisting and morphing their minds, so that if they were not delivering any form of vile retribution of pain and anguish, it would be they that felt pain and anger. There would be no end for the Will Eaters, for if they were to sit at the campfire with their brethren, the nails would bite, and they would bite terribly, and force them to spill blood, be it their own or that of their brothers. The World Eaters did never enjoy slaughter. They enjoyed combat, but in an honorable sense. Even now, modern World Eaters, the only reason why they crave the violence is because 1, they've gone mad due to the influence of Kharn, or 2, they purely wanted the biting to stop. What they admired beforehand was the growth of a warrior, to overcome trial and tribulation with your brothers by your side, to watch your kindred grow stronger, to bleed with them, the warrior, the honorable, the noble form of combat, to arise stronger and better than before, and to bear your scars with honorable pride. A warrior true, a warrior proud, a warrior mighty, proven in the fires of battle, and equal with his kin. Yet that was robbed from them, by their own father no less. The World Eaters were one of the most selfless legions. They were willing to give everything, just so that their father would love them. They willingly mutilated themselves, giving them over to a life of pain and agony, all so that their father may love them. The pain of it all. We don't often think about 40k, because in some cases the 40k is just supposed to be wacky, don't think about it. But there are times when you should think about 40k. It is only the terrible pain of a child abandoned by their parent that could motivate someone to accept a device that drilled into their flesh, into their cranium. It cracked your skull open and exposed your brain, one of your most vital organs, to invasive mechanical tendrils that burrowed deep into your cerebrum and caused you to feel pain, physical, emotional, and spiritual pain, if you were doing anything but physically ripping someone's skull out, drinking their blood, and carving their skull open. They did that so that their father would love them. They went through all of that just so their father would look at them with anything but disgust and disdain. In that sense, they would care about family more than any other legion, even the salamanders. Whereas a salamander will do many things to save their family, they prize duty overall, hence why they're willing to sacrifice themselves. A World Eater was willing to give up even duty just so their father would love them. They gave up their lives, their honor, their pride, and eventually their very souls, all that their father would have pride standing beside them. But in the end, the twisted amalgamation of screaming rampant red rage, he would find no love for anything. For how could he love his sons when he could not even love himself? But the World Eaters did not understand that. Well, they didn't want to. So, they continued, until even after 10,000 years, they still heeded their father's call, and they paid the ultimate price. Their legion is wiped out. The Warhounds are gone. The World Eaters are gone. All that is left are Khorne berserkers, All they wanted was love, to be loved, and to love one another. All they wanted was love, just love. They just wanted to be loved. And their reward was eradication. Their greatest crime was assuming their father could change, that he would change. The pain of it all, the tragedy of it all. The World Eaters are one of the most tragic legions, but they become the most tragic when you realize that, unlike the Death Guard where Typhus tricked them, unlike the Thousand Sons where Magnus did love his sons, unlike the Iron Hands who lost their father, the World Eaters never had a chance. Their father never loved them. Their father never could love them, because the Emperor betrayed him. The Emperor broke him, even if he didn't know it. Thus, the World Eaters held on to a forlorn promise. They held on to something that never even existed, and in the end, it cost them their lives. People think that people gravitate towards the World Eaters because of their anger issues. And yeah, that is true, but I feel like a lot more people feel that kinship with them, knowing that the World Eaters are children abandoned by their parent. They spend all their life trying to win the approval of an abusive parent who never loved them to begin with, and in the end, it cost them everything. It is a terrible and bitter truth for many children to accept, but sometimes your parents do not love you. Sometimes they are not worth your love and admiration, and sometimes there is nothing you can do to change that. And you have two options. You can become like the Warhounds, who rejected their father's misguided ambitions and stood loyal to the oaths that they had sworn. They stood true in their own pride, in their faith in themselves, for they knew that while their father had taught them these teachings, he was not the teachings. He had failed them, and they would be better than him. They would not allow themselves to fall as he did. Or you could be like most children and most World Eaters and fall with your father, not understanding that he never did love you, and that he never would. But most damning of all, it was no fault of your own. It was your own father's failings that caused him to spiral into madness. It was his own loss that caused all this to happen. Your only crime was simply being born to him. You did nothing wrong. Yet, you were a better man than him, so you decided that you would still follow him. You decided that love was worth it, even if the love wasn't reciprocated. For to you it was better to die trying than even consider living without it. And whilst that is noble, it is noble to a fault. He never did love you, and that was no fault of your own. Do not allow yourselves to pay for his mistakes. Let the lesson of the World Eaters be a warning. You are your father's son, but you are not your father, and you do not need him, because if your father truly loved you, you wouldn't have to tell yourself that he did. You are brave. Be not afraid. Be brave. Be strong. Be who you wanted your father to be. And know that while there are those who would reject you, there are those who would gladly accept you. While Angron rejected the World Eaters, he was one man. The entire legion, 100,000 strong. All of them were brothers, and they did damn fine without their Primarch. Just as you will do damn fine without your dad. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you guys really enjoyed this. Taking a deep dive into the World Eaters, they were a legion that I never really gelled with. I never really looked into them too much, but I'm very lucky. I have two great friends who are massive World Eaters fans, and talking to them about that and getting their opinions of it, it really gave me some insight into just how tragic the World Eaters are and how terribly painful their tale is. So to my World Eaters fans, I hope I did your boys justice, and to every non-World Eaters fans, I really do hope you guys gain some more appreciation for these fellas. But I want to say a massive thank you to you guys for watching, and this is the first day of Bradley's weird thing, pre-Christmas whatever thing. Basically, I'm going to be posting a video every single day until the 23rd, and on the 23rd, there's going to be an extra special video, and then I'm going to take a few days off for Christmas. But look forward, get strapped in. You can expect a video every single day starting from today. And I just want to say a massive thank you to you guys for watching, and a very massive thank you to my wonderful, lovely members. Yes. Firstly, I want to say a massive thank you to Mr. RB20 Guy. Let me know how I pronounce that, Chief. Who joined in the Sergeant tier. Welcome to you, sir. Hope you enjoy your stay. I want to say a massive thank you to my 2 Lieutenant tier members, Mr. Eddie V3 and Miss Majora of the Void. Shout out to my Sergeant tier members, Mr. Damiak and Mr. Andy McGee. And shout out to my private tier members, Mr. Thomas Moslons, Mr. Ivan Score SBW, and Mr. Michael Hayada. Thank you guys oh so very much for joining. It means the absolute world to me that you guys put this much faith in me. And make sure to join the Discord so I can give you a personal thing. You guys get a special role in the memberships, and you can access these videos a full day early. Though, you know, during this week that may not happen because I got a schedule to keep, and I'm not too good at schedules, but I will try my best and probably fail. But I love you, and I hope that makes up for it. So yeah, join up to the memberships, and most importantly, you get my love and thanks, because I will talk to you, and I will give you a big hug and a kiss. But remember, this will always be free, so you watching and subscribing and commenting, more than enough for your big boy over here. And I will love you regardless of what you do. Mwah! Yes, I will. But ladies and gentlemen, I have been the General Brother 101. Welcome to day 1 of whatever I called it before. I may find some other thing to call it. But I have been the General Brother 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Make sure to stay honorable out there, boys and girls. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss, Rangers. I just want to remind everybody that yes, while Angron did treat his boys badly, Biggie fucked up first. So I'm not excusing Aaron's behavior, but remember, Biggie sucks.